Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this, the first District Secretary attempt by me, first attempt by a District Secretary here to do the Club Secretary training for 2024-2025. And thank you very much for bearing with me in terms of that element of it till we've got up and running. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping if we may. Mary, I'm just going to ask you to do me a wee favour if you don't mind in a second or two. But for the rest of you, can I just say that if you are in the house and you're on your own, then can you drop Mary McLeish? You'll see Mary's name as a co-host on the list of participants there. A private message just with a note of your address and an emergency contact number, so that if in the event of anything happening and you take ill or unwell, we can get some help to you. Do be assured this data is only going to be saved for that purposes and will be used for anything else. So Mary will just keep an eye out for anything untoward there. That would be perfect. So tonight, down to business. Now, for those of you who know me, I've been the District Secretary since the start of the last Rotary year. And Ken said before I joined, how was I getting on? And I said, well, being honest, I'm not entirely sure. One day I'll maybe get to the hang of getting to know what the job is all about. So I am no expert. So tonight is as much about, for those of you who have been in the role as club secretaries for a good while, to also make sure that you're sharing your experience with the wider group here. We're all here in terms of that element of it to learn. Could I have a quick show of electronic hands? Who is coming new into the role as a secretary or assistant secretary for the first time in this new Rotary year? Is there anybody? Chris, Debbie. Right, Ian. Oh, we've got a few. Perfect. Okay, that's ideal. That's smashing. So, as great as well, the electronic hands, there is more than one screen, albeit more than one page of you on my screen. So if there is anything during the course of the session that you do want to raise your hand and give me a heads up that you've got a question, then please do so. I'll take any burning questions designed for a Q&A. So my other pledge to you is that if I don't know the answer to your question and there's nobody else on this call who does, then I will take it away and I will come back to you. And as I say, what we will also do is make this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be shared along with the presentation slides after the sessions have been done. So let's see if we can get started now with the screen sharing. So bear with me 1 second, and we will try that. And then at least you don't need to look at me so much. You'll be able to see this. So I'm hoping if somebody can give me a thumbs up that you were there. That's smashing. Ideal. Right. Next stage then. Can we get it to start? Sure. From the beginning. Right. Right. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant. We are good to go. So, yeah. So, what have we got? This is the agenda I'm looking to cover, and I'm hoping that we will cover any questions that you may have. These are headline topics. Some of them we won't go into in so much detail. Some of it there will be a little bit more information. So, just as I say, fire up any questions that you may have, and we'll pick them up as we go along. So, let's just take it. Your role as secretary. It is fundamental. I'll be honest with you. For those of you who don't know, I've actually never been a club secretary.
Lucky you.
Never been a club secretary, but I have been a club president, and I know how vital my club secretary was to me during that time period, and how vital you are to each and every member of your own club, your surrounding clubs, and to the wider district team. So first of all, thank you very much in terms of all that you do. I'm quite sure that you will be the most sought after name on the email lists that there is across all the members of your clubs. So what does it involve? It's such a big job. Everybody wants to know how important the Constitution is. Now, we're going to cover this evening. You don't need to remember everything by heart. Nothing in the job of secretary is a memory test. It is all about knowing where to find the information, and that I'm hoping that as we go through this evening and towards the end, I'm going to give you a couple of documents that will hopefully make life a little bit easier for you. I hope in terms of where you find the various bits and pieces of information. So there is on the Rotary GB&I site the copy of the Standard Club Constitution, and that applies to the Rotary across Rotary clubs, across Great Britain and Ireland. Now, you don't need to dot every I and cross every T on the Constitution. I often get asked questions which are there, and perhaps a club may want to do something slightly differently. The guidance has always been, that I've picked up during the course of this year, is that don't get too hung up on the small thing. But there are times when it is important. If you're going to be doing something and it's in the spirit of the Constitution, that is fine. But so long as all of the club is accepting of that. Kath, as you will all know, my predecessor, had a lovely quote, which is 99% of the time the Constitution doesn't matter, but 1% of the time is. I just don't know which 1% it is. There are things which are set there, and it's rounding about things like the meetings, etc. But also there are some aspects of it that if the club accepts and does something slightly differently, don't get too hung up about it. But do get the basics, i.e., have a council. That is your decision-making body. And no matter how small your club is, we strongly recommend that you have a council. It may just be that it's 3 members, yourself as secretary, president, treasurer, but have a council so that in the event that there is any circumstances whereby you feel that you may need to have a group who are going to make a decision, it could be on any topic, that there is a decision-making group and that members know who that group is. Okay. So, I said before, you're the person who keeps the club operating and right. And what is your role as a secretary? Now, one thing that I have done, which I'm not going to, I'm not going to interrupt the screen share just now, but which I'm going to show you at the end of this session, is I have for this year designed a document which is a year in the life of a club secretary, 2024, 2025. And what that will do is, so alongside the slides, which you will get a copy of, as I say, the presentation will go onto the district website, and I'll send you all the link to that. I will also send you a link to this document, which I say I will give you a preview after we go through the actual presentation. And that will talk you through month by month the things that need doing, and hopefully as well the links of where you can go to either get the information or to be able to find out more or to undertake a task. Okay, so what do you need to do as secretary? Now, not all of these, because you'll notice it says right at the very bottom, it says get help from an executive secretary. How many of you have an executive secretary and assistant secretary?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next. Yeah. Yeah. So again, from the point of view of having that assistant secretary, decide what they're going to be doing. Look at what are the roles that you wish to do, need to do as secretary, but get them to help, because there are some of these that they may be able to do for you. They may be able to take some of the minutes. They may be the person who does all your DMS and Rotary View updates. Not that I'm saying that you would want to be, giving them away, but I know how much stress DMS updates can sometimes bring on secretaries. So that is there. So just looking at these aspects of it, you'll notice here as well, one of them talks about the maintenance of attendance records. Now, to be clear, attendance records aren't required these days, but some clubs do still choose to do that for either reasons of pastoral, just keeping an eye on how their membership are doing and attending, or for any other purposes. But going back to that constitution, and when I said earlier on about the spirit and dotting the I's and crossing the T's, the constitution does actually say that there is a requirement for 50% of meetings or 12-hour service or a mix. But again, that's one of the perfect examples of when the constitution says one thing, but the club may in practice do something slightly different, and maybe is not necessarily going to challenge a member because they've not been able to meet that, because they've maybe done something else or for whatever reason. So it is just about, as I say, a perfect example here of how you can make the constitution work for you. I think possibly the rest of the comments there are probably not a surprise to you. What I would say is that one of the key tasks that there is the completion of returns, the compliance one. That is the biggie. The compliance return will be hitting your inboxes probably in the next week to 10 days. And that will be required to be returned back to me by the 1st of July. Now, in terms of what that does, is that's not, yes, you or your president needs to sign that and return it back to me, but you are not the individual who's taken responsibility for that. It's not just down to you. This is a real perfect example of where, as a club secretary, engage with your council, engage with your wider membership, and make sure that they all understand what exactly is involved in terms of their compliance. I'll talk you through what the areas are it covers as we go on later on. Here as well makes mention of take action and proposed new members. Again, as a reminder, there is no longer the need for the 7-day letter as there was. That is optional. However, the views of existing members do still need to be sought. So I know that many clubs do still use a format of a 7-day letter as a way of garnering of opinions and making sure that there's no issues in terms of that aspect of it. And then probably the biggest bugbear, shall we say, I have probably, for the existing secretaries, I probably had messages from many of you over the last 10 months or so about DMS and Rotary View. So, the update as best I know it. Rotary View Phase 3 testing has been completed. And they are currently at Rotary GBNI working their way through the feedback that has been provided by the users who have been testing that pretty robustly, shall I say. It will be the case that when it's ready to roll out, Rotary View will totally replace DMS. So everything that you do in DMS at the moment will move to Rotary View. And for those of you who have been, and thank you very much for everybody who's done that, who's been updating their club officers, you will have seen that's in Rotary View. What's your thoughts on Rotary View? Do you find it easier, more difficult? Chris, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's the timeline for Rotary View rollout? Is there any?
Come on, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be putting a fiver in the lottery. In fact, I would be so proud. So I've heard a lot of timelines, Chris. So I'm really not, when this is being recorded, I am not going to commit myself to it. There was word about the end of the Rotary year, but there was also word about the start of the calendar year. So I think, being honest, I would rather wait and see it rolled out properly and make sure they've got rid of all the glitches before they rolled it out. So I would suggest probably, I don't see it being anything potentially into maybe Q3 of this year, sort of the autumn time, but maybe sooner. But yeah, as soon as I know you guys will most definitely know. You'll most definitely know. So I am conscious as well that there are therefore a few discrepancies currently between the information that's on DMS, that's on Rotary View, and it's on My Rotary. So I would suggest that it's well worth having a wee look at it. I have been assured by Ulster that there's going to be a final synchronisation of the information across Rotary View and My Rotary to ensure that that is accurate. And I would anticipate that that would be being done before the end of this Rotary year, bearing in mind that come the 1st of January, 1st of July, that's the information that will be used for your club invoices, etc. But it's maybe just worth having a real look at it. But can I ask you just to bear with me whilst they are looking at it? As I say, I do know that the team down there are working through quite a number of trying to get Rotary View to speak to My Rotary, to us, or to me. I always go, is that they just pushing a couple of buttons? But clearly it's a lot more technical than that. So as I say, they are working through those issues in terms of that side of things, but hopefully they will get that up and doing and get sorted there. And for me, the really important bit in my plea to you as your district secretary is that the information that comes out, when I send the newsletter out, which goes out roughly fortnightly, 1st of the month, and then somewhere in the middle of the month, goes to club presidents, club secretaries, and executive secretaries. That's based on feedback that we had a number of years ago that there was too much information that was coming out from the support team at District and too many emails, and that members were getting, being honest, we're just getting lost. Information was getting lost in the mire. So the rationale behind sending it out to those 3 roles is that within your club, I'm asking, pleading, that information is shared across your club with your club members. Now, depending on the size of your club, they may find that there are different ways of doing that. Some clubs, I know, just simply take the newsletter and the secretary send it on directly. Others will share information. If it's a bigger club particularly, they share the information with team leaders. Others will use it in terms of their own newsletter. It's about finding out what works best for you in your club. But the really important thing is that the information may not necessarily be something that's of interest to you, but it may be something that's of interest to a member. So I would encourage you, and please share it as much as possible. I've had feedback from clubs where they've not known about deadlines for competitions, they've not known about the friendship exchanges, they didn't know about shoeboxes, all information that is trailed in the newsletter. So please, as I say, that's my one plea is if I can ask you to ensure that that is acted upon and shared there, that would be very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment there and just stop. Has anybody got any questions that they want to ask at this particular point in time before we move on anything I've said? Perfect. So, as you'll see, here are the deadlines here. These are various meetings. We touched on it in the last screen that there are, one of the key roles for the secretary is about calling the meetings and taking the minutes of many of the meetings. So these are all the various ones, and you'll find this on the year in the life of the club secretary when this comes out to you. Most commonly of them here that everybody will be aware of or comfortable of seeing are the annual general meetings and the special general meetings. They are the 2 most common. EGMs are perhaps less likely to be called upon. And then your club assembly. So the opportunity for your incoming team, your incoming club president and their team to share what their plans are for the coming Rotary year. Now, I'm very conscious that we do have a number of areas at this moment in time where we don't have an assistant governor in situ. But if you do have an assistant governor, then please invite them along so that they can find out what's going on. And if you don't have an assistant governor, then feel free. We are looking at this moment in time about how we're going to get the information from those clubs into the district executive meetings to the awareness of incoming District Governor Brian and his wider team. So if anybody has got any bright ideas out there on how you would like to share that information, then do let me know. But as I say, we're probably most likely going to come out and just ask you to give us a wee resume of what the projects are that are being planned in your club, and any questions, any concerns that you have, so that we can help and support, and any areas that you want any help, or so that we can ensure that we identify and provide you with the support that you want for going forward. So as I say, hopefully there is nothing too onerous here. We'd mentioned just in terms of the meetings and in general, when we're talking about the club council meetings, it is very much, as I said earlier on, the council is a decision-making body for the club, but there is that expectation that they are going to they're going to recognise the moods of the members, and that any meeting decision will be supported by the members. There is, again, within the Constitution, should the need arise, if there's something that is happened that members are unhappy about, there is, again, a procedure within there that will allow members to take or to challenge back any decisions. But we always hope, and we'll come on to dealing with conflicts later on, that that doesn't happen and that these meetings can go fairly smoothly. So, a favourite topic of many, GDPR. It was the big topic many moons ago, a few years back now. And it may seem that perhaps Rotary clubs don't necessarily have a lot of personal data, but actually there's a lot of it out there. Just so that you can give me some ideas, what kind of personal data do you think your club may hold on to at any given point in time? Just shout them out.
Names, addresses, phone numbers, partners' names.
Email addresses.
Well, I heard somebody say partners' names there. I just had a wee folly to myself there. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Was that you being controversial, Mary? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Dates of birth.
Dates of birth. Yeah. So, sponsor forms, raffle tickets, membership records, photographs. Any of these are personal data. It's anything that's on its own or in a combination can identify a person. So I guess it's that age-old thing, and I would say that we're probably all guilty of it, is do an audit of the information that you hold. If you've got the name of prize winners from 5 years ago, do you still need that? Probably not. And if you've got something and you discover that you shouldn't have it, then please do destroy it safely and securely. I heard a moment or two ago the handbooks. You will hopefully be aware, perhaps be aware, that the district stopped producing a paper handbook 2-3 years ago now, and that it can be downloaded currently from DMS. It's one of the jobs that's still on DMS at this moment in time. Do many of your clubs still have a printed handbook?
Yeah.
Mine does too. You just need to think about the printed handbook. It should be destroyed annually. There shouldn't be copies, historic ones, going back. And I guess the challenge is, because if we think about it, depending on what you keep in that handbook, there's an awful lot of personal information. Should that fall into the wrong hands in any way, shape, or form, the implications could be quite serious. If you can think of members' names, addresses, phone numbers, mobile numbers, email addresses. If it is recorded the partner's name, you may recollect, those of you who were in Rotary, probably when GDPR was a really big topic, Again, from the point of view, it is a case that actually the Rotarian partner's name, should that be recorded? Should that actually be retained?
No.
No. Because they're not the Rotarian. They're not. And do you have permission to keep it? Possibly not. Scott, you've got your hand raised.
What we do, Carol, is we ask for permission every year. So we send out a consent slip once a year to the membership. And if you want to have your partner's name in the paper handbook, then you give your consent for that year and that year only. Is that permissible? Is that allowable?
Technically, if I was the GDPR person from GB&I, no. But I am aware that it does happen in a lot of clubs, Scott. It is one of those things that, in effect, you have the permission of the Rotarian, but actually, do you have the members? Do you have that individual's permission? You know.
Well, the slip specifically asks the individual to sign to say that. So if it's a husband, a wife, or a partner or anything, you know, they sign to say they give their consent.
They're signing. Right, okay. So they're signing there as well.
So my wife is. I'm not signing for my wife.
She's signing for herself.
Signing for herself, yes.
She's signing for herself.
Yeah.
I guess it's one of those areas that is. Yes, you've got her permission. It's the best option in terms of that. So yes, if you've got somebody's permission, yes, you have to be clear how long it's been held for, what the purposes are it's been held for, and if that's in your data policy and is available to anybody, Scott, you're probably okay with that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
The other thing to just be thinking about is actually, because what does happen if, heaven forbid, information does end up in the wrong hands. So data leaks, what's most likely to be a data leak? Yes, it could very well be a printed handbook that's been lost, left on a train, thrown out of somebody's bag. But it may be that it's an email chain in which there's not just Rotarians, but there are also third parties. That's why it is so important to use BCC on your emails. Specify who you're sending the email to so that everybody knows who it's going to, i.e. if you're not using DMS, because obviously if you're using some of the systems, you'll notice when I send an email out, it says who it's gone to so that they know. That's as long as I remember. There is occasions I forget, but I generally try and remember that. So if it's to the social event committee, if it's to the youth team, if it's to a group, then specify that along the top. But please ensure that it is that you are using BCC if you're not using Rotary systems. These kind of things can happen. Fortunately, it's not something I've been aware of in the district itself. However, there have been instances in the wider Rotary across the UK where somebody's personal email was inadvertently shared on an email group. It resulted in quite a distressing time for that professional who was a social worker, who ended up having to make all sorts of changes. Rotary had to ask for the message to be deleted by all the recipients. That was information that was shared without consent. It may be that it happens in your club and it's okay because it's Johnny down the road and Abdi Kane's Johnny and Johnny Kane's Abdi, but you never can be sure. So please be really careful in terms of that aspect of it. If there is a data leak, then do let me know as soon as possible. I am your district data protection officer for my sins and amongst everything else. And we just need to take the relevant steps in terms of identifying what exactly the breach has been and what action we need to take. So keep the information safe. If it's in paper, make sure it's locked and secured and that you only have access to it. But ideally, and if it's being kept on a computer, make sure it's password protected. If it's containing personal data, and just ask you to be aware, as always, that there is that you're keeping things like firewalls, antivirus software, etc., up to date. And as I say, no bad habit to delete data when your need for it has passed by. We're talking there about data having been released out there. The other thing just to be aware of as well is that you may have come across or may have heard in the press, there's been quite a bit recently over the last wee while about subject access requests, or SARs. Now, they're probably something that I'm much more aware of in the day job, working in a bank, because that's where you've probably heard most of the commentary around and about them, is about people wanting to find out what is held on file about them. But Rotary and Rotary clubs and Rotary GB&I are subject to exactly the same type of thing. So at any point in time, anybody could ask you to tell them what information you hold on file about them. Now, that's any message through any medium or any platform could be captured by that request. And there's a really tight deadline of 30 days, which must be made. So in the, I'm going to say, unlikely, but not impossible situation that you ever do get a SARS request and somebody wants to know what you hold on file, then let me know immediately. And we'll get, there is support in terms of Rotary GB&I to ensure that we deal with that correctly. Because any message between any two members exchanging information, that's Rotary business, and that's in scope. So we just need to be mindful of that in terms of when we're sharing information and who may see it and who may request to see it. Okay. And it is always important that when you are collecting information, Scott talked about earlier on, Rotarians given the permission once a year, given the permission on joining and checking that their information is correct once a year. But also as well, from the point of view of non-Rotarians, let's make sure that we are ensuring that they are explicitly opting in for sharing their information, not opting out. We can't accept that if somebody gives us their details, that we can use it infinitum for any purpose. Okay. And it's always worth having a wee check that your privacy notice on your club website is referred to and is up to date. Okay. It's quite a chunky sort of topic in terms of GDPR. Anybody get any questions on that?
Yeah, can I ask a question, Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, you've got photographs there. We have our area final coming up for the primary school quiz. And we've one school who has 2 pupils without permission. Can we just exclude that whole school from photographs and take photographs of everybody else? Is that?
So you've got permission for everybody else, maybe?
Everybody else, and for some of the school, some of the team for that one particular school, but there's 2 pupils in that school. So I thought we just don't take any of that school in general, but we can still take everybody else, which seems a bit awkward for the kids that don't get their photos taken. But
Mary?
Yes.
Carol, it's David McGee speaking.
Oh, there you go.
My experience of of being in schools, in school management, would be that you could take the photographs, you just can't publish them. For example, Newton Hill School near us put smiley face image over the photographs of the kids who don't have photo permission. Oh. And that's perfectly legal. That means you have a photograph of the 2 kids who want, say, but you're not excluding the 2 kids who've got the permission.
And I've seen that done with another. School, David, in terms of primary school quiz there. Malcolm, you put your hand up. Is that in the same topic, or is that something else?
On photographs, but not photographs of children, just photographs copied from the internet. Do you want me to
right, go? Okay, yeah, we'll come on to them in a okay. We'll come on to them in a second then, and then that'll be perfect. So yeah, Mary, in terms of what I've seen done is as David's described there, is the blurring of the faces of some of the youngsters who've been involved in terms of that aspect of it. if it's a case that the rest of the team, you want to take that, take the pictures there. I guess it's just about being sensitive to what's there for the rest of, as you say, for the rest of the youngsters involved. But you can't be sharing them. Obviously, as you say, you can't be doing anything other than that. But smiley faces or blurring of the images, I have seen that accepted by the schools. I would run it past the schools in terms of that element of it as well, just to be absolutely certain. Sure. If in doubt, don't publish it. Is my personal advice.
Yeah.
Malcolm, you're going to mention about photographs, and was that about copyright for photographs?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, during COP28, I was chair of Great Britain and Ireland's Rotary Environmental Sustainability Action Group. And for a newsletter, I picked up an article on recycling from the Chicago Tribune. And I emailed the Chicago Tribune and I got permission to use the article. Now, the article was headed by a photograph of somebody in a recycling place, but under it in brackets was Agency Presse Française. The Chicago Tribune gave me permission to use the article, and I assumed it meant the whole article, i.e. the photo and the text. About 18 months later, I got an email from somebody in Canada saying I was fined $200 for the use of that photograph. I referred it to the ESRAG team and committee, and they said, no, that's a fair cop. We'll pay the bill because it was an environmental related post. But the point I'm making is, if you're using photographs off the internet, be very, very careful that you get permission from the photographic agency, as well as if it was a newspaper article or what have you, the editorial staff on that team.
Yeah. No, thanks, Malcolm, and thanks for sharing your experience in terms of that side of things there as well. I've known of other incidences in terms of that aspect of it where folks have been caught. There has been a session done previously on copyright. I've shared it back end of last year, I think it was, and it's well worth a refresher on that. And again, happy to share that if anybody feels that would be beneficial. Roy?
Sort of a similar point as Facebook. I went through and got rid of any photos that weren't our own. And then I think one of the sessions on copyright, somebody somewhere mentioned about we do a Santa sleigh. So one of our members had taken a short video, about a minute long, minute and a half, of got the music on the sleigh. So you can play the music on the sleigh because you've got the whatever it is,
PRS,
Performing Rights Society, but you can't put that music on Facebook.
Oh God!
Because you're playing the music on a public. So I took the video off. So that's another thing to be careful of.
Yeah. I didn't know that one.
Yeah. No, thanks, Roy. That's a great shout in terms of that element of it. You're right. In terms of the copyright, no matter what image, photograph, content, whatever it may be, ensure that you get the authority of whoever generated that content. Now that will probably be a challenge as time goes on because AI will shortly be producing everything. But it is really important that we do that. Have many of you seen the copyright session that Roy mentioned there? Have most of you been party to that one? No?
No, sorry. No.
That's certainly one then I don't think I put that on the list, so I will I'll include that there as well. It's well worth, as I say, it was a webinar run probably about 18 months or so ago. But it's well worth just a refresher in terms of what you can do. And actually, it is one of those things about, we did a very useful example one day. Sheena, I know you're on the call here, if you can remember when we were in Forres, and we had a number of people who were taking a picture. Is that photograph still your copyright?
It is, because the photo was taken by our president, but it was my camera. Sorry, no, the photo was taken by me on my camera. So, no, that's wrong, isn't it? it was Brian, the president, who took the photo, but it was on my camera, so it was me that actually owns the copyright for the photo.
So
I think that was...
No, I think, did you know, was it not Brian's photo? Was it not Brian's camera and you took a photo?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a perfect example after having been in that compliance training, that copyright training, because Brian asked, and the reason I know was I was along Whiston Forest that night, and so Brian had said, could there be a photograph taken? And he asked me for my permission. Was I happy to have my photograph taken? I hate my photograph taken, but for the purposes of his exercise, I said, that's okay. He got permission from the other person who was taking that was going to be in the picture with him. That was fine. He was in the picture. He was happy. Then he asked Sheena. He gave Sheena his phone, and he asked Sheena to take the picture on his phone. But actually, Sheena, despite the fact that all Sheena did was the fantastic job of making us look wonderful, well-ish, best she could do with the audience, with the quality of people she was working with. But actually, the photograph's copyright is Sheena's. So just bear in mind, it's like that age-old story that was on that. There was a monkey in a zoo somewhere that grabbed somebody's photograph, grabbed somebody's camera, and took a selfie. That picture belongs to the monkey. I rest my case. I rest my case. Okay. So yeah,
the copyright belongs to the person who takes the photograph, not the camera.
Photograph,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, as I say, that is it. The other thing that's also just worthy of mention when we're on the topic of photographs, perhaps just before we move on from that, is that if you are going to be hosting an event and you're taking photographs, make sure that you've also got signage up that lets people know that if they don't want to have their photograph taken, who they should be. It may be somebody in a green polo shirt, whatever it is, so that that it's clear that there's going to be photographs taken. Okay. Anything else on the topic of photographs before we move, or GDPR in general before we move on?
Yeah, just to say that we had an incident in our own club where one of our members, who subsequently took his toys out of the pram, had sent in a whole lot of photographs of events. Right. When he left the club, he asked to get all his photographs back and removed from our website. So we replied to him and said, yeah, if you tell us what they are, we'll remove them. And we removed them. But it was just an act of sheer petty cussedness that the photographs had to be removed.
Yeah. That maybe takes me to disputes and mediation. They might call Malcolm. Did you say that was my next slide?
It wasn't mediation he needed, it was a kick up the backside, but that's just a personal viewpoint.
Oh, dearie me. The bottom of this slide says speak up, values and behaviours. Yes, indeed. But it does, in all seriousness, Malcolm, it's a fair point that, you know, if somebody does want to get the photographs back and you have only one person who's taken all of the club's images, your public image is going to be is going to be a challenge, and you would hope that ultimately you could therefore find somewhere in a disputes and mediation process, or just a bit of common sense.
They weren't all the photographs, there were just some.
There were some. But, you know, even some, it's a dent, isn't it? It's when clubs are working so hard to improve to generate and to show off everything that they do, the last thing you need is a situation like that. So yeah, you're right. Just be mindful of these things with photographs in all sorts of ways.
If I could just mention what we do in another organisation I'm in is if someone wants to hand over a photograph for our use, we get them to sign a form transferring the copyright ownership to the organisation.
Yeah, good shout. Thanks, Doug, for that. Yeah, no, that's good. And it keeps you in the clear, doesn't it, in terms of that element of it? Just gives it, and there's no dubiety then thereafter. No dubiety. So no, thank you for that. That's ideal. So yes, we are all individuals in Rotary, and we like to think that we'll all get on with everybody. But there may very well become points in times where there can be clashes in personalities. And we all know that, because no matter how many members you have in your clubs, there will often be discussions and topics where there will be differing views and differing opinions. Again, not an area that I'm going to go into in huge detail this evening, but if you do find yourself in a situation where there are some difficulties, there is going out in the next newsletter, which will go out on Wednesday night, technology allowing. There is a reminder, and again, I would ask that you share this with all members. It's a handy thing to be looking at doing in conjunction with the compliance certificates that I talked about earlier on, is the values and behaviours, which are really just an awareness for all members about how we treat one another in the organisation, and, as I say, to ensure that we are looking after one another. If we do find ourselves in a situation where you find yourself unable perhaps to talk to somebody in your club because you're concerned about what may be happening, but there's something that you're seeing that doesn't sit well with you and you're uncomfortable with it, then there is also Speak Up, which is a service that's offered by Rotary GB&I. It's confidential, and it's for anybody who's concerned about the behaviour of another Rotarian and doesn't know who to turn to. As I say, you hope that these things are not going to be needed, but it is just worth bearing in mind that there is a lot of support in this situation. There is, within the Rotary GB&I site, a very simplistic flowchart which guides you step by step through the steps required if the club finds itself in a situation. But as always, you would hope that some form of early intervention by the club leadership may stop something from escalating further. We do have 2 members who are currently trained in mediation. So if we did get to a point and formal mediation was required, there are 2 members within our own District 1010 who have been formally trained in that aspect. And indeed, we can bring in from other clusters if that was found to be necessary. I have to say, in the 10 months in the job so far, it's not something that I have come across, and I'm hoping to try and keep it that way. But please be assured that if there is something that happens, it's not on your shoulders. It's not on any one individual's shoulders within the club. Please speak up, and we will get you the level of support that you need for the incident that you find yourself in at that particular point in time. The other one that always exercises many people is health and safety. Do all your clubs have a health and safety officer?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting some good thumbs up in terms of that element of it. Absolutely vital. If any of you happen to know, I'm looking for a health and safety officer for the district. So if any of you know of anybody who you might want to volunteer for that job, it's not too onerous a job, but I would welcome anybody who is, any suggested names, drop me an email after this session. That'd be much appreciated. So, health and safety. In terms of this aspect of it, sorry, excuse me. Just a reminder, a risk assessment is needed for every event, for your club meeting, and for every event that you are organising. Nowadays, a lot of what we're seeing are the event plans. Many of you who are involved in the organisation of events and in conjunction with your local councils will have seen that nowadays there's quite a chunky, often required event plan, and your risk assessment will feed into that in terms of that element of it. And it is just thinking about looking at the event, and if it's an event you do every year, don't assume that all you need to do is blow the dust off of last year's risk assessment. Please do take the time to look back through it again and check and make sure that it is still fit for purpose. There will be different risks. There will be things that will have changed, perhaps about the management of the event, or about a route, or about many an aspect. Venue may have changed. That will need to be taken into consideration. I'm going to touch on insurance and give you some examples in the next slide. but just I can't stress enough the importance of making sure there is a risk assessment. Without it, you do run the risk that your event may not be insured. So please just, as I say, take the time. And as always, I would encourage all clubs to make sure that as you start planning for an event, that you're actually starting to plan for that's part and parcel of your planning. It's not the bit that's done at the end, because so often that's the way it can be. Malcolm?
What happens where club members are asked to help out at an event organised by somebody else? So I'll give a very concrete example. Every year in Kerry, they have the switch on of the Christmas tree lights in the square, and club members are asked to steward the crowds and kind of control the traffic. Who's responsible for the health and safety, the risk assessment forum there? Is it the people who have asked us to help out? Are the people signing the forums? What's the club's role in that?
So I guess it comes down to, would I be right in saying that's being organised by another party then, Malcolm? It's been organised by another group, the Christmas Lights Committee or whosoever. If they're organising it, then they should be providing your members with a risk assessment.
Okay, thank you.
David? Right, you're on mute. That's a 5 out of foundation. I'll debit your account.
That's 10.
That's good to say that.
Right. In answer to Malcolm's question, my take on it from experience would be that if they don't have a risk assessment, as in the third party organisation, you either have to create one yourself or you don't do it. So if they don't have one that meets your standards, there's no reason that you can't have one for taking part in a third party's organisation event.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's about, if we look at it, it's about, Malcolm, the fundamental thing is about protecting the members, and it's about being sure that they're comfortable in terms of what they're doing. But yeah, ideally the third party should be providing it. But yeah, as David says, no reason why the club then couldn't produce something if they're not. Has the other one that's probably slightly more recent introduction has been Natasha's Law. Again, perhaps a couple of nods of awareness there in terms of that side of things, but from that point of view, just be aware that when it comes to that, there's a need for providers to be aware what's in the food. So no longer is it just about having the appropriate food hygiene licenses to meet requirements. It's also about the allergies and allergen information in terms of that side of things. Again, just keep an eye on that. There are also developments that are ongoing, not quite come into law yet, regarding anti-terrorism. But I know from my own experience that a number of clubs are finding that that's something that councils are looking for more and more as part of their event management and their event planning for bigger events there. David, you still got your hand up. Is there something else, or are you're fine? Okay, that's fine. So again, from the point of view of looking for guidance and forms, as I say, there is a blank risk assessment document on the Rotary GB&I site. And that always kind of comes into insurance. Now, in terms of insurance, there's a number of questions that are sometimes asked. The insurance guidance is always updated from Blacklets, our brokers, usually towards the start of the next Rotary year. So I would always encourage you that when I see that, I will share it, and I'd always encourage that you ensure that that goes to the relevant members and that you have a look at that yourself, because there are changes that do happen. For example, I believe for any of you who operate cycling events, there have been some changes to their the policy changes for cycling events. So what isn't covered, just because it was covered last year, please don't assume that it's going to be covered this year, and double check it. I really couldn't have believed it when, as District Secretary, I spent an hour at least on a call And all that talked about was Santa sleighs and festive events last year. It is, when it comes to insurance and safeguarding, probably one of the hot topics that there is on an annual basis. So going back to the last slide, if you operate Santa sleigh, then Santa sleigh needs a risk assessment for each route that's happened, for each route that is done. Santa sleigh needs to be aware of how many people should be on the sleigh. Here's a question for you. How many people should be on Santa's sleigh at any given point in time?
One.
Excellent. Good. That's perfect. The reason I say that is that I did see photographs where there was more than one person on Santa's sleigh last year. For a number of reasons, we can't have that. I've not been aware of there having been police enforcement north of the border, but south of the border, people have been fined for £120 fines, 3 points on their licences, varying things, rounding about the sleighs, the towing of the sleighs, etc. So please make sure the owner is responsible and they must hold relevant insurance for the vehicle and the towing risks. And engage with your local authorities as and when, because as I say, I couldn't believe how much of a discussion there was on that particular topic. Similarly, as I say, when it comes to fireworks, bonfires, ensure that you're meeting all of the requirements that there may be in these higher risk events, and ensure that you're engaging with the insurers at an early stage to make sure that everything is covered and that you are not going to be exposed any more than in the horrible situation that something happens. Because your risk assessment, your insurance are the first things that any prospective claimant is going to be looking to. I'm going to share just a couple of examples with you here. I was on a webinar recently by the insurance brokers, and they were given some examples of claims and what the costs of those claims ultimately were. So they were at an event, and a bin, you know, one of these sort of waste bins, sort of fairly big chunky bins, blew open in a strong wind. So let's be honest, we are predominantly in the north and northeast of Scotland, so a strong wind could happen any time to any of our events. That bin lid blew open and struck somebody in the face. That claim cost £11,500. There was a pop-up shop where someone tripped over a clothes reel. That claim settled at £52,000. Why? Because those, you kind of think somebody tripping over a clothes reel, how did it end up at £52,000? But it could include things such as loss of earnings, legal fees, and various other aspects of it. So again, it's just about, sometimes it's the little things, and it is the devil of the detail, but just to be aware of it and ensure that event leaders are aware and thinking about the seriousness of what they're doing in terms of protecting members and the communities that we serve. So I'm going to stop there on that sort of health and safety and insurance aspect. Any questions or any comments on anything there? Anything that you wanted me to elaborate on or ask any more questions on there?
Could you just say something more about the allergies and allergen information?
So in terms of the, if you've got, so in a lot of situations, what we do have are, I'm kind of thinking of sort of local events that we'll see here. We will have, if you've got providers, so food providers, Chris, who are coming onto your event, and they are looking at providing service, they're providing the food offering, then they will normally always be, they should be licensed by your local authority, and they will have a folder with them which will have all of their relevant documents, and included in that will be whatever they need round and about being able to ensure that they are complying with Natasha's law. Now, in terms of from a Rotary perspective, I guess what we have to be aware of is if we're producing the food, we need to be aware and know what the ingredients are, because if there's somebody who has the potential to have an allergy against, I'm picking on peanuts because that's quite often the most common one, then we need to be absolutely clear that we know what the ingredient lists are that are in our products, so that we don't run the risk of potentially giving somebody something which could have a serious implications for them, likewise, health-wise. Roy?
There was just one thing that we did. We lent our gazebo to another group. This was Christmas before last. Left it out overnight underneath a tree that had got heavy snow, and then the snow thawed and the snow collapsed on top of the gazebo. So I'm guessing it's fairly standard in our insurance policy for club property. Gazebo, well, I think it said marquees, but I presume a gazebo is a subset of marquees. So you're not, unless you specify it, you're not covered for gazebos. So the moral of the story is don't leave your gazebo on a tree with snow on.
Sound advice, right? Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that one. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Chris, did that answer your question in terms of the food ingredients side of things?
Partly, yes. I just can't remember when we were doing crepe making and things. I can't remember the details of what we did in the risk assessment, so I'll go back and have a look at them.
Yeah, perfect. But any other questions, just give us a shout back.
Yeah,
perfect.
thanks.
As with everything, Roy obviously was unfortunate in terms of his insurance claim wasn't, by the sounds of it, not successful. When it comes to the gazebo, if you are in the unfortunate situation that something does happen at one of your events, whatever it may be, then please ensure that you engage with the insurers at the earliest opportunity. Send all the details on to them. So if you get a claim, send all of the information on to them without making any comment. So you should directly forward the information by either email or phone, all correspondence, no comment to be made. Coming back to what I said earlier on about GDPR, just in case anybody has any concerns, there is no issue with us passing on that information from a third party. If they are making a claim against Rotary and against our club, there is nothing wrong. We are not breaching GDPR to share their information with our insurers, because that would be what would be expected in the course of being able to deal with their claim. Okay, so it's probably one of those, it's one of the few situations where we can get information and pass it on and without having that express authority there. Okay, and as I say, we've not touched on it here in great detail. But again, when it comes particularly to your Santa sleighs, etc., please just be aware of the safeguarding issues in terms of that side of things as well. Santa hands should be visible at all times. Make sure, and even in the simplest of things, I'm quite a tactile person. Those of you who know me, I'm quite likely to put my hand on your shoulder or whatever. If I was in your company, it's slightly more difficult for me to do it on Zoom. You'll be lucky to hear. But just be aware that perhaps that's not acceptable behaviour for everybody, in terms of, again, sort of sharing experiences and something that has happened for another Rotary club. They had helpers, young scouts, year cadets, some of these types of groups who were out helping at one of their events. A Rotarian popped their hand on the shoulder of a young person. However, that young person had some additional support needs, and specifically didn't like to be contacted in that way and didn't like to be touched, and that posed some issues. It was fine, but in the end there was a bit of distress in the short term. So again, I know it's really difficult if you are, as I say, like me, quite a tactile person, but just be very aware of where our responsibilities are and what the actions are that are being taken by members. So, I mentioned earlier on about useful resources. So there are a range of documents which are all found on the Rotary GB&I site. The link is on here, and as I say, I'll share this with you afterwards. There are also, I've talked about a number of compliance rules during the course of this evening, and if anybody wanted any more information for their club members who are undertaking those rules, then all of that information is also found specifically in the Rotary GB&I members area. What I'm going to do is going to share with you now, this one, which is what I alluded to earlier on. This, how many of you have sort of a calendar of the year in terms of those of you who are long-serving club secretaries will perhaps either have this or know this in your heads. David was there and he's gone again. But what I've taken the chance to do this year is to produce what is, as I say, a year in the life of the club secretary. I'm not asking you to read all of this just now. This is a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. But this will give you the links to the Constitution. It will give you links to Rotary Club Central. Oh, Ewan, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, Carol, I can only see your slides that you've already shown us.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're meant to. That's what it'll be. We're meant to. I've not done the right one. Wait to be safe. Thank you. Just as well, you're there to keep me right. That's just to see if you were still multitasking, you see, or what you were doing. So, right, okay, there we go. See, right, I'll try again. You win the prize. You were fine. Right, here we go. Try this one. That work better this time?
Mm.
Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. We got it, Carol.
Cool. That's perfect. Right. So, yeah, as I say, this is designed. I'm not going to ask you to read it all just now because there's a lot of information on it. Those of you who are just coming into the role, don't be too terrified by it. I know it's going to look quite chunky because it's 3 pages long, but I'm hoping that this will give you every link that you could possibly need. So, the Constitution, the Rotary, the district websites, brand centre, so that anybody who's looking for something, it talks you through what you do throughout the year, the dates of council meetings, when you need to hold your SGM and what you need to do at it, right through until June of next year. So it starts at the sort of May time, so from now out and going through. So do you think that would be helpful?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I will share this now. Not everything will be applicable for every club. Yeah. Okay, so don't get doing it and think we don't do that. There are things, the AGM, the SGM, yes, they're to be done by all clubs, but there may be some of the other parts that are not necessarily directly involved, but it will hopefully give you a guidance in terms of that aspect of it. This will go alongside something that you'll not have seen yet. Some of you may have, I'm not sure, some of you may have seen it at the District Assembly last week, not last week, week before. We have also created a Rotary Lingo page, which has just gone live on the website. You win it, well, you could find it if you went looking just now. It's under the Club and District Support page. But it has on it, and it's designed, I guess, for all members, but particularly perhaps for new members, but I suspect may be useful for many. And that will give you every acronym that we could possibly think of that you're likely to come across in Rotary, from your DG to your EGMs and your IPs and your everything. It gives you an explanation of what that means and also all the links that go with it. So if you do get the chance to have a look at that, as I say, don't worry about if you're thinking, I've not seen that. It's coming out in the newsletter in a couple of nights' time, because I say it's literally just been completed there. But again, that will have some details and will have some information for you about where to go, what to do. Because as I say, there's none of this is designed to be a memory test. Okay. But what I would say is that if at any point in time you are stuck, hopefully you know where to find me. If you don't, then let me share with you. So best ways to get in contact with me are either by email or mobile. Email, pop it through to me at any given point in time. If you haven't had an answer within or an acknowledgement within 48 hours, you've ended up in my junk box and I've not got to it. I tend to usually check my junk box every couple of days, daily couple of days. And as a club secretary, if you don't do that now, that's probably my one tip is start doing that now. It's amazing what you find. People who send me emails pretty much every other day can still end up in my junk box. So as I say, if you don't get an acknowledgement from me within a couple of days on email, then please reach out to me again, because the chances are that your message has gone out there somewhere. So email address is in the slides, but it's Carol, C-A-R-O-L, Bruceland, B-R-U-C-E-L-A-N-D, @hotmail.co.uk. Our mobile is 07780 961 335. Now, I would say mobile, you've probably got the best chance of catching me evenings and weekends. I am still working full time, so it tends to be I'm less likely, unless you get me when I'm on holiday, I am less likely to be picking up messages, certainly Monday to Friday during core office hours. So that is them. So from that point of view, I think I've done enough speaking for this evening. Open up for anybody who has any questions or anything that they want to ask or any more clarity on. Malcolm, I can see you first there.
Yeah, just to say, first of all, thank you very much and well done. I think that was very, very helpful. As I was listening through what you were saying, and I've done these meetings before, I was very conscious that there might be some clubs who are not represented on this training. And that leaves them wide open to going astray, if I could put it that way, from the guidelines that you've laid out. Is there any form of accountability being exercised by the district to follow up on clubs whose secretaries don't do the training? So, for example, if our guys don't attend the district grant training, then they're not eligible. And I would go as far as to say that if a secretary doesn't attend this training, then they're not eligible to be a secretary. At least attend it once.
Yeah. So in terms of the session, there's not an eligibility because that's quite specific with foundation, and that's the rules that Rotary Foundation sets. Malcolm, I absolutely know those ones because I lived and breathed them myself for a number of years. So from the point of view of the accountability, I guess the thing is that all of this information will be shared. So not just with you guys who've been here and they've given up your evenings, or those who are going to come and sit in a couple of weeks' time, then going to give up their Saturday mornings. That will be shared with everybody. Fundamentally, Malcolm, all the clubs must accept their responsibilities when they sign off their compliance certificates. And that's why that's not a tick box exercise. That's really important that secretaries are aware, presidents are aware, because ultimate responsibility sits with the presidents and the council and the individual members. So whether it's safeguarding, it's diversity, equality, equity and inclusion, whether it's insurance, those policies must all be signed off. In the event that there is an incident, it will not necessarily invalidate insurance. However, it may be considered a material fact if a club has not taken its responsibility seriously. So I'm not saying that you wouldn't be covered, but what I'm saying is it may be the case that the club could be exposed, and it's therefore its members could be exposed in terms of that element of it. And that's why it's important that everybody is aware. And I know it's a bit tedious, and we joined Rotary to have fun, and we joined Rotary to do stuff. But the most important thing is that we do that safely for our members and for the community. So I guess there's not that element. And I will follow up in terms of those who've been able to join and those who haven't, to make sure that everybody gets information. I've had a couple of folks who've not been able to join the sessions but are asking for the recording. So again, those will be made available so that the resources are completely available to everybody to access them at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I would just like to echo what Malcolm's just said about the quality of the training. It's been very good. Thank you very much. And this wasn't lined up at all, but one of my questions was about the district grant training for those who are applying for district grants. I put my hand up and say, if the training is taking place, I've missed it. Have those sessions taken place as yet, Carol? Because I promised to keep our district grant person up to date. I'm worried I've missed the date for that.
Oh well, the bad news. I've got good news and I've got bad news for you, Scott. Right. The bad news is you've missed the first two sessions.
Oh God. Okay.
Right. The good news is, I tell you, my newsletter's good. You're getting all the waiting for my newsletter come Wednesday night. My newsletter Wednesday night, there is going to be a very last session. Off the top of my head, I think
Brilliant.
It's the 16th of May, a Thursday.
Brilliant. I know that's fine.
Yes. Yes. So there is a very last session that Brian Johnson is doing, and after that, it's finished. So
I'll make sure he's on that then. That's fine. Good.
Make sure he's on that one. Make sure he's on that one. Yep, that's it. No, you're fine. No bother at all. Any other questions anybody else has? Any other burning issues or concerns or worries or top tips to share? We've got a few minutes. No. I've stunned you all into silence.
No, thank you very much, Carol. Really good. Well done again.
As long as you're not all going to resign on me, then that's fine. That's the main thing. That's the most important thing. It's the most important thing for your clubs. So what I'll do is, as I say, I'll gather all the information together and I will get it out to you. The chances are that, so the compliance certificates I intend to get out probably within the coming week, just so that as they go to council, depending on when your council meetings are, that will give all the clubs an opportunity to look at those. And as I say, if I could have them back by the 1st of July, that would be absolutely amazing. It saves me chasing them until Christmas. That would be smashing. The slides and the recordings I will get out probably after the second session has gone through on the 11th of May. But if anybody does need anything between now and then, don't hesitate to give me a shout. Other than that, if there's nothing else further, again, I would just like to say a huge thank you to you all, not just for appearing tonight, but for all that you do for the clubs, all that you've continued to do. You're never alone. And as I say, if I don't know the answer, I'll make sure that I go and find it out for you. And just keep in touch and good luck for your next year. Thank you very much to everybody. Safe trip back to you. Safe trip back to your follow line, whatever. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Carol.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.